Hello, Mr. Jamin. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone. We are starting in 3 minutes maximum.
Yeah.
So, by the time we start, I just request everyone to just check it out. If your name is not written properly on your profile, you just need to rename your profile. And how to do that? You just need to just check it out. At the bottom of your screen, you have participants list. In that participants list, you just need to check out your name. I mean, go to your profile, and there is an option of renaming it. So please rename your profile so that we'll be able to understand, I mean, who exactly attended the webinar. The second thing is, if the voice is not audible, you just need to turn your audio on so that you will be able to listen to the speakers. We are just starting in 2 minutes, so by the time, just try to rename yourself. Yeah, nothing else, just try to rename yourself, please.
Do I need to use this?
You just need to turn on the audio, ma'am.
Yeah, I have turned on the audio, but do I need to use earplug also?
No, that is completely okay. Your voice is, your video is not visible, ma'am. You just need to turn on your video.
I had, okay, start.
Is my voice clear? Jamin? Hello?
Yeah.
Sir, your voice is clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, all are ready, huh?
Yeah, we are ready, madam.
Oh, Ratnaprabha madam.
Yeah, from morning we are behind it.
I know. Such a big program. Yes. Judy madam, how are you?
Yeah, she is also trying many things, so busy.
Yeah.
We are starting in a moment.
Yeah. How many have participated? 295. Oh, I managed.
Yeah.
I think today's bandwidth is good because yes, 290 able to 290 nearly 300. Bandwidth is really good. Yeah, people are able to join. Hello,
Yeah. Hello, madam. Namaste.
Namaste.
Okay, so yeah, everyone, we are starting the webinar. We'll start with the prayer, which is specially for Mahatma Gandhi. So, Judy ma'am, up to you. We'll start with the prayer.
Yeah.
All right, so such a positive start we have today. So let's just begin this wonderful webinar. And I just want to welcome each and every one, all the participants. Many of you know me. I am Jaimin Shah, co-founder and CEO of Teachers. We are a Government of India recognized startup providing college intelligence application, or you can say college automation application, to many colleges nationally as well as internationally. So I hope you all are well and fine in this pandemic situation. To start with, I can't thank more for giving such a great response for the fourth time to our initiative, Let's Talk Education. This time the participants are from 17 different states of India, which is really a record for us. So of course, the list of all the states will be too long, but I would really love to mention all the states. So I'm just mentioning all the states from where participants have registered today. So we have participants from starting from Jammu and Kashmir to Uttarakhand to Delhi, Punjab, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Goa, all the 5 southern states, Karnataka, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, even eastern states, Chhattisgarh, West Bengal, UP, and yeah, majority of them are of course from Maharashtra as well. So again, we thank you so much for giving such a huge response that we have got, and we from our heart we welcome you, welcome each and every one of you. So now let me give you a brief introduction about what is this initiative all about. So Let's Talk Education is basically an initiative by teachers in various aspects of education by bringing the best educationalists on the platform and making the most out of it. So we are just trying to bring the best educationalists, bringing the best topic, and we just try to discuss, and if any solution is coming up, then that will be really great for the entire fraternity. This is the very first season of Let's Talk Education, where we are conducting series of webinars on making strategies on how our industry could revive post this pandemic COVID-19. We had Dr. Dilip Patil, director of DLLE of Mumbai University, in our first episode, which was held on April 27th with BL Amlani College, where the topic was all about how we can make our students industry ready. Our second topic, or second episode, held on 2nd of May in association with Valia College, where 2 prominent speakers, Dr. Hemlata, principal of KC College, and Mr. Asif, vice principal of DSIT, both spoke about how we can make our faculties technology ready. In our third episode, which held last Saturday, which was in association with MVM College, led by Dr. Kalkoti sir, and we had 2 prominent speakers, Dr. Lili Bhushan, principal of KES College, and Dr. Debajit Sarkar, principal of LS Raheja College. They both discussed on how we can, strengthen our college education. This is our 4th webinar of this particular season, where we have kept the topic totally unique, and where our star-studded speakers will be speaking about the significance of Gandhian philosophy post this pandemic. So we are more interested about how Gandhi's philosophy could be related to this pandemic, and how we can relate it or maybe inculcate that particular thing in our life. So before we begin this topic, let me really thank our client, Gandhi Shiksha Bhavan, Surajbagh College of Education, and especially its principal, Dr. Ratnaprabha Rajmane, for associating with us for this particular webinar. Now, Honorable President of Gandhi Shiksha Bhavan, Srimati Nupur Mitra, will address to all the participants.
Hello, Nupur.
And a very good evening to all. On behalf of Indian Council of Basic Education, I extend my warm greetings to the esteemed panelists, Professor Kiran Desai, Professor Vibhuti Patel, Shri Anil Hepar, and all participants of this webinar. I feel honored to be given the opportunity to introduce my institution, namely the Indian Council of Basic Education, ICBE for short, and the Surajbagh College of Education. The Indian Council of Basic Education was founded in 1963 by several eminent teacher visionaries such as Acharya Bhise, Shri Vajubhai Patel, Shri Acharalu, Shri Shesh Namle, Srimati Sulabha Panandikar, and Shri Haribhai Trivedi, to name a few. Thus, ICBE nurtures a school comprising pre-primary, primary, and secondary sections, as well as the Surajbagh College of Education. It also publishes a research journal called Quest in Education. The Surajbagh College of Education which has teaching to learn and learning to teach as its motto, was founded in 1969, thus completing 50 glorious years in the year 2019. In all humility, I would like to state that the college was awarded an A+ in 2003-4 and A+ 3.54 in 2016-17 by NAAC. Successive principals and faculty of the college have made sincere efforts to set new benchmarks in teacher education. It lays stress on basic education based on Gandhiji's Nayi Taaleem and also on Tagore's concept of education and cultural nurturance, as these were very dear to our revered founders. Friends, as we all know, Mahatma Gandhi and his thoughts and views encompass several areas of life, be it social, economic, political, ethical, environmental, and so on. The subject of this evening's webinar, namely, application of Gandhian philosophy post-COVID-19, is an interesting one, considering it is a novel world scenario unprecedented in the known history of mankind, thus posing huge challenges to humanity. I'm sure it will bounce off great ideas. I wish the webinar success in this endeavor. Thank you. And a very good evening to all. On behalf of Indian Council of Basic Education.
All right, so yeah, we should thank Srimati Nupur Mitra for such a wonderful welcome. And so now, unlike our previous webinars, this time I'm not going to introduce the topic and neither I'm going to introduce the speakers. Because every time what happens is it is me, it is the entire team who is picking up the topic and maybe picking up the speakers as well, but not this time. The entire idea behind this topic and the efforts behind bringing out the best speakers, or I can say best Gandhian philosophers, was of Ratnaprabha Rajamane madam and Judy madam. So without taking any credit for that, let me invite Dr. Ratnaprabha Rajamane, the principal of Surajbagh College, to introduce the topic, and after that let me invite Dr. Judy madam to introduce the speakers. So it is their topic, so they'll be speaking more about the speakers and the topic. So up to you, ma'am. Ratnaprabha ma'am.
Good evening all. Namaste. I'm Dr. Ratnaprabha Rajamane, Principal Surajbagh College of Education, Indian Council of Basic Education. Hello. Hello.
You're audible, ma'am. You're audible.
Conducted by Indian Council of Basic Education. Just now, my beloved president, she has introduced our institution and she said out the so, thank you very much. And for us. Here, the dignitaries on the dais and this platform of the webinar, first I will welcome them. Madam has welcomed it, but Dr. Vibhuti Patel Madam is our and for going ahead.
Ma'am, your voice is little, I mean, not proper. There is some disturbance coming up.
Hello.
Yeah, you are audible now.
Yeah. Shri, hello. Smiling person, and he has accepted our invitation, and he also said that yes, I will expose my experience for your webinar. Basically, this topic, today's webinar's topic is application of Gandhian philosophy during and after lockdown period. Very, very essential that this is the very essential topic because nowadays in the lockdown period, we are doing the application of the Gandhian philosophy only. Everybody is a self-reliant. Day before yesterday only our Prime Minister said that आपको सबको आत्मनिर्भर होना चाहिए. We are applying the same principle in our life now. And the 11 vows of the Mahatma Gandhi is an observation and the relevance for this appropriate period. Ahimsa Satya Asteya, Brahmacharya Asangraha, Sharira Shramasvada, Sarvatra Bhaya Varjanam, Sarvadharma Samanatva, Ekadasha Ratna. This is 11 vows that if we are applying in your life, then nothing is impossible for the lockdown period. That is what this topic we have chosen. Our speakers, they will talk on the migrant worker. They will speak about the industries, economics, and the social things also. Mahatma Gandhi was the man of peace, and he did not hesitate for the fighting, and he was believing in the right. He was thinker and philosopher, who was the first and the foremost man of the action. Mahatma Gandhi gave us 3 guiding principles, Ahimsa, Satyagraha, and Sarvodaya. And it is a value of this principle that we have discovered and we want to deal effectively in the today's situation. More about this topic and more about the speakers.
Over to you, Judy ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, one and all. Self-reliant India is what the nation is looking for at this moment. So in order to make our young, vibrant youth of this nation to be more productive, to understand the new role that they need to play at this moment, we have eminent speakers to enlighten us on various topics, which will make us to think and act with regard to what kind of syllabi, what kind of curriculum that we need to plan and work on. To reflect on the present system and plan adopted measures to create local capacities, to create policies, to contextualize and to have high social practices and to have collaboration is what the need of the hour and this webinar is intended to. So to throw lights on that, we have taken 3 subtopics. The Mahatma Gandhi and rural development, experience of Yusuf Meher Ali Trust. This will be shared by Mr. Anil Hiba, who is the director of Emergent Meditech Private Limited and subsidiaries, Director TSP Consultants Private Limited, which has pioneered the concept of sustainability among manufacturing companies since 2011 and has been working closely with UNESCAP and United Nations in furthering 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. He has participated in high-level political forums, HLPF and UN SDGs in New York, USA in July 2018. He was awarded the Business Person of the Year award on Environmental Business category by Economic Times and Filmfare in February 2019. He is the Chief Functionary of Helping Hands Charitable Trust, which is at the forefront of COVID-19 relief operations in Mumbai and its suburbs. Sir is closely associated with Gandhian veterans like Mr. Subbarao and others. He is a trustee of Bharat Jado Abhayan, started by late Baba Amte, which works for furthering national integration and peace. Is a trustee of Bombay Sarvodaya Friendship Center, which works in the field of watershed development, spread the message of Sarvodaya across the world. So, we are really honored to have you in our midst to share your thoughts. We have the next expert in our midst, a well-known figure every one of us know, especially in the education field, is Dr. Vibhuti Patel. She would be sharing on economic philosophy of Mahatma Gandhi. She's a professor, Advanced Center for Women's Studies, School of Development Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. She retired as professor and head of economics department of SNDT, Women's University, Mumbai, in 2017. Her areas of specialization have been gender, economics, women's studies, human rights, social movements, and gender budgeting. She has authored Women's Challenges of the New Millennium 2002, co-authored Reaching for Half the Sky 1985, Indian Women Change and Challenge 1985, and Status Report for ICSSR, Critical Evaluation of Women's Studies Researchers during 1947-1988. She is a co-editor of series of 15 volumes empowering women worldwide. She has edited 2 books, namely Discourse on Women and Empowerment 2009 and Girls and Girlshood at the Threshold of Youth and Gender in 2010. She has been a member of various expert committees for IGNOU, Ministry of S&T, and NCRT Delhi during 2005 and 2012. She prepared base paper on gender for Mumbai and Human Development Report 2009, MMRD, Human Development Report 2017, and co-authored Socioeconomic Status of Muslims in Maharashtra for Maharashtra State Minority Commission, Government of Maharashtra 2013. Such eminent personality is going to share with us on economic philosophy and Mahatma Gandhi, more on post-COVID situation. What can the educationists think and do about it? We have in our midst Dr. Kiran Desai. He's the director associated with CSS since last 25 years. His area is mainly with labor-related issues, especially concerning industrial informal sector and issues pertaining to urban social order, communal issues concerning literature society interface. His concerns remain applying and linking research academic pursuits with society and people. He has been associated with Edit Gujarati Journal Art. His current project works on relevance of Gandhian ideas and methods, impact of globalization with special reference of labor, searching for space in globalization era, finding sector livelihood earners, in urban case of Surat city. There are many publications he has done. Gramin Gujaratama Sharma Santalantar in Gujarati. The parody Anakokhet Satyagraha, Adivasi Assertion for Rights, Child Labor in Diamond Industry of Surat, Searching for Space, Livelihood Seekers in Fringe Sector of Surat City, on Determinants of Communal Relations, a case study of Surat. Sir, to have you in our midst, we are really privileged, and thank you, Lord, thank you for accepting our invitation, and thank you all of you for being in part of this webinar. Thank you.
All right. So in short, if we see, we have, I mean, really great speakers. There is someone who is a thorough Gandhian philosopher. There is someone who is a thorough social worker. And then there is someone who is from TIS. And there is no need of introduction when we talk about TIS. So we have, I mean, one of the best speakers that we could get for Gandhi's philosophy. And so we'll start the session. Actually, we have to start with Kiran sir, but there is some issue going on with Kiran sir's network. So we have to start with Anil Hebbar sir. So we'll be starting with Anil Hebbar sir, and then Kiran sir will follow. So Anil sir, it's up to you. Over to you, sir. Just a moment, I'll unmute you, Anil sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now you are audible, sir.
I'm very happy to be here today and share my views on this very important topic, which is the application of Gandhian philosophy post-COVID-19. I was a little nervous as I was wedged between two professors. I'm not an academician, I'm an industrialist and a social worker, a small businessman. I was also nervous because I'm only used to being lectured, not to lecture. I'm a son of a professor, I'm a brother of a professor, and a husband to a professor. So I have professors all around me. So I'm always being lectured and I never get a chance to talk. And then the audience also is a very august audience of more than 400 academicians, I'm told. So that was the other reason for my nervousness. I have been called to share my practical experiences from my work in the society, especially in the last 45 days, when me and my wonderful team has hit the roads and are toiling to ensure that nobody sleeps hungry in Mumbai and its suburbs. So that has been our motto for the last 45 days. Well, my romance with Gandhiji's philosophy started during my school days itself. I was moved by the life of people like Mahatma Gandhi, Albert Schweitzer, Florence Nightingale, Mother Teresa, who are all known for their compassion and their deep-rooted desire to serve, to care for the others, and to tend for the others. Most of us do good in our own ways to people who are known to us, and also to some people who are not known to us. But then the greats make it into a continuous, sustained effort. Gandhi has said that if we cultivate the habit of doing this service deliberately, our desire for service will steadily grow stronger and will make not for our own happiness, but for that of the world at large. Gandhiji was always tending to somebody or the other. He was tending to his sick father. He was tending to sick people. In fact, he had brought to his ashram, Sevagram ashram, a leprosy patient, and he was tending to him on his own. And during his South Africa days also, in the Boer War too, he risked his life in the front line and took care of wounded soldiers. He also volunteered to help in a hospital. So he made this passion to serve regularly build within him. And taking up cases of indentured laborers without fees was also a regular habit for him. And so Gandhiji developed consciously the tendency, and by the time he came to India, it had become the central theme of his life. Service had become a passion, service had become a central theme of his life when he came to India. Gandhiji believed that the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. He was known for saying this. I was very lucky to come in contact with two great souls very early in my life, as soon as I passed out of my engineering. One was Baba Amte and the other was Dr. S.N. Subbarao, whom I fondly call Baiji. He's known as Baiji by all of his disciples. Baba Amte, I had a very fortunate meeting with him in 1987, and then he invited me to join his Knit India cycle tour when we went across the country 5,800 kilometers on bicycle just to know the country better. It was a sort of a mobile university to go to the people and learn about their problems. And that was the time when the entire country was burning. Punjab problem was there, and Assam was burning, Bihar was burning. They wanted a separate state of Jharkhand. Darjeeling was burning. The Ulfa trouble. Every state was burning, and that was when we went around on bicycle, preaching non-violence to the people in the footsteps of Gandhiji and trying to bring peace in that region. And one by one, the problems also got solved, and some credit should also, I think, go to the efforts that Baba Amte put repeatedly for about 5-6 years in bringing peace to all these territories. And then he also is very well known for his Anandvan, which is a leprosy ashram in Warora, where there are more than 5,000 leprosy patients who have been tended to with a lot of love and care and been rehabilitated in some vocation or the other. And the second person I came in touch with was Dr. S.N. Subbarao, the 93-year-old Gandhian, who was instrumental in getting 564 dacoits in the Chambal Valley to give up their arms and take up a peaceful life as farmers or some beekeepers and such professions in the Chambal Valley. And later he thought that he should mold the character of the youth of the country. So he came out and started the National Youth Project. So I'm part of the National Youth Project, which has 4.5 lakh members across the country. And every month we have a camp of about 500 students in different parts of the country. Those of you who are from colleges would know, the NSS normally sends the students to our camps, and it's a 1 week camp. The government gives a 50% railway concession looking at the good work that happens in these camps. So I was molded by these two people, and later, as when I came to Mumbai, I was very fortunate to come in touch with Ida Patkarji, who introduced me to the problems of the slums in Mumbai. And she had started the Ghar Bachao Ghar Banao Andolan, which was working in the slums of Mumbai and which has been nurtured since Meratai spends a lot of her time in the Narmada Valley. It's nurtured by Bilal and his associates in Mumbai. So I've been in touch with them for many years now, and I take care of the back office for them. And so what happened was when this whole thing happened, the Corona pandemic came about, and the lockdown started on the 25th. I think we had a meeting on the 24th or so to talk about other things. We're all part of the Jan Swasthya Abhiyan, and then we also talked that this pandemic is going to create a lot of issues. The lockdown is going to create a lot of issues for our migrant workers in the slums. Since Ghar Bachao Ghar Banao, GBGB as it is called, has been working in the slums, where most of the people who live are migrant workers because that's all they can afford. Bombay is a very hostile place to live in, and a person who gets a salary of 10,000, 12,000 or is a daily wage earner cannot even afford to live in a small hutment in a decent locality. It's very, very expensive. They can't spend more than 3,000 or 5,000 rupees for rent. So they all go to the slums, and the living conditions there is just horrible. And that was the right place for even the epidemic to spread. So we came across on the 24th and decided to go to work as soon as the lockdown starts. We thought that there would be a problem for food because they'll not be able to work. And so we decided on raising funds for about 800 to 1,000 families in Shivajinagar, Mankud, and in Ambujwadi, where GBGB has been active. And we were also very skeptical of how we would raise those 35, 37 lakhs that we wanted. But then the good thing about doing good is that there are a lot of people who keep doing such things in their own way, in some way or the other, in their own places. And when something like this happens, all of them come together. Like I have been associated with half a dozen different organizations, all working on Gandhiji's shown path, and all of us got together in this, and then the work just exploded. Initially, our plan was to help about 800 to 1,000 families, but we have so far ended up feeding more than 1 lakh people for the last 45 days or so. And then it has been pretty easy. We have got now more than 25 people in different areas who are ready to take out their vehicles and go and deliver to slums, even in containment areas, when the whole city, the whole country is locked up in their houses. And in fact, today I had a very funny thing when I went to Tata Institute and I wanted to speak to the professor inside. I had to pick up some vegetables for the camp, migrant camp that we are running in Warsaw. The security guy was not even willing to touch my mobile. He says, तुम तो इधर उधर घूमते रहते हो, तुम्हारा मोबाइल को मैं हाथ लगा तो मुझे भी कोरोना आएगा. So he was not even इधर speaker में लगाओ, मैं हाथ नहीं लगाऊंगा. That's the type of attitude that people have, and in that we have 25 people who have come out and who have been working with us. So this is how good work sort of piles up, and everybody comes. And now we have no problem. We receive a call, and in within 24 hours, we definitely would reach a package there. And we have been providing 5 kg rice, 5 kg atta, then dal, oil, sugar, tea, poha, rava, whatever is required for daily living, including washing soap and bathing soap, is provided as a package. And this has, I'm sure, made life easier for these 1 lakh people. But unfortunately, there are 50 lakh people who live in, who are migrant workers living in the slums of Mumbai, and the situation is pretty bad. That's the reason you see so many of them wanting to go back to their native places. And the fear psychosis that has been created 24/7 through our media has made it worse, because people feel that if you're in Mumbai, you'll end up getting corona and die. And then that's why they want to go back to their own homes and live there. Apart from this, so I've just take up 1 or 2 points which of Gandhi, which as a social worker that I try to put in all my work. One is the talk of trusteeship. He said that a worker is always a trustee. He doesn't own anything, he's a trustee. And Gandhi also said that as a matter of principle, he never used to raise more money than what is required for a certain project. So you raise money for a certain project, make a budget, raise money, spend it on what you wanted to spend, and that's it. End of the day, you keep your books correctly and you submit it. So you should not unnecessarily collect money and make a big corpus, and that leads to a sort of ownership. So Gandhi always talked of trusteeship and not ownership. And a few things which I think will happen now post-COVID, because we're talking of post-COVID-19, is that there is a big boost that Gandhiji's concept of Swadeshi will get. When Gandhi talked of Swadeshi, it was about using products and services available in your vicinity. I'm not talking about things like cars or mobiles that always gets manufactured somewhere and comes, but daily things that you use in your lives, like vegetables. It could be clothes. It could be the house you live in, the raw material for the house you live in. This should all be sourced from the place where you live. Now, when the Sevagram Ashram was set up, and Jamanlal Bajaj was building a small hut for Gandhi, Gandhi made it a point that everything that is needed for building the house should come within 50 kilometers of the vicinity of that area. So that was the point that he made. And only with such a philosophy can there be sustainability in the world. So today what happens is like there's enough for everybody's need, but not for everybody's greed. That's the other thing that Gandhi always used to say. People have become very materialistic. They want to have more and more. You're not happy with one mobile. You need 2 mobiles, both the mobiles with 2 SIM cards and whatnot. And there's no end to this materialism. So this was bound to happen. The world has place for 3 to 4 billion people to live in. That's the sustainable population that the world can bear. If the world has to live if the humanity has to live forever. But what happened was we have become 7 billion now. We look at nature as a resource, not as something that has to continue forever. And we are just after profits. Business is only after profits. There is competition. There is no cooperation. There's competition. And we just want to make more and more profits. We're not bothered about what will happen 50 or 70 years down the line. So the world the nature has just pressed the reset button. And a lot of things are going to change in the coming years. Now you are seeing apples that were coming in from Washington. You had oranges coming in from Australia. You had all sorts of things. You had kiwi coming in from New Zealand. Whereas wonderful kiwi is grown in Arunachal Pradesh, there are no takers for it, but you get kiwi from New Zealand. You get oranges from California. So this sort of thing is going to stop. We are going to rely more on our neighborhood for things that we need in our daily lives. Life will become more sustainable because we were unnecessarily using plastic for all our packaging. All these things get shipped from across the world. Needs a lot of packaging, and all this packaging material is sort of disposable and not recyclable. So these things will stop. You will buy from the neighborhood grocer something which is grown locally. You will take your bag for it and then fill it up. So there's no use of unnecessary plastic. So all these things are going to change the world the way we have never seen before. We should encourage local industries, like, for example, I take the case of cotton. Cotton cloth is the cotton textile is the best textile suited for Indian climate, which is hot, which is humid, and which absorbs the moisture. So cotton is the best suited. Gandhiji talked of charka, he talked of suit katai and all that, just because cotton was the best textile. But we were all importing textile from abroad, and that's why he started the Swadeshi movement. This will get a big fillip now. We should use the migrant labor who have gone back to their own places now to develop local industries. Now, the other organization that I'm closely associated with, Yusuf Merali Center, they have done a lot of work over the last 62 years. It was started by Dr. Gigi Parekh in 1962, before even I was born. And from then, they have been having medical facilities for the tribal people who are living in that area, Tara and Anjanvel and all those places. And then they make soap, they make their own cold pressed oil, they have a pottery unit, they have a skill development center, they have 10 gunta sheti, where people are trained how to cultivate whatever they need. Just 10 guntas of land are enough for a family to survive on, and whatever you need for your food can be grown on those 10 guntas. So they started this experiment long back, and that has been pretty successful. So all these efforts will get more and more relevant now. Earlier, people were just thinking, ye to Gandhian organization hai, kuch to kar raha hai, purana zamane ka. But now things are going to change. It's not just going to be go to a supermarket and buy something which comes from 10,000 kilometers away. We are all going to rely more and more on what is available locally. Now, the Prime Minister spoke of Atmanirbhar yesterday. Now, Atmanirbhar is only possible if you also have democracy at the local level. So, when I speak of Atmanirbhar, it is that you should be self-sufficient in items required for day-to-day living. That is for your food, for your clothing, and your shelter. Now, what's happening is we all have been talking of vocational education, and vocational education is only creating robots to serve the industry in a cheap cost. That's very sad. We should take a relook at Gandhiji's Nai Talim. Nai Talim attempted to bring the best out of every child. Now, every child is not the same. The same size does not fit every child. So each child has its own specialities, and the education should be in such a way that it should be an integrated education. It should be bring the best out of the child. So people should study more about Gandhiji's Nai Talim, which is still being continued in Sevagram in Wardha. And you should all the educationalists should look more closely at those experiments. And in this Nai Talim, it's all about cooperation and not just about competition. Today, education is all about competition. Who comes first? Who clears which exam? Who gets the best package? So it's all about that. Whereas in Nai Talim, it's all about cooperation. So this is one thing that education should relook at, and it should develop a value system and not just a skill which will give an income to a person. So value education is most important. Human beings should not just be looked upon as a resource. The problem was that none of the employers cared a damn about how the employees are living, what is their living condition, whether they're getting food, whether they're getting water, whether there's any healthcare facility. 60% of Mumbai lives in such shanties. Now I hope that this will be a good opportunity to clean up the entire country. Rural housing should be given focus in a big way. This can create a lot of employment. The whole model of development was wrong. Now look at the example of big dams. For 30 years, we all chased big dams, and we neglected developing small projects. We neglected giving power to the people in deciding what they want. So when we were behind big dams, people like Medha Patkar and all were laughed at. And now what happened? Finally, I think the ex-chief minister of Maharashtra, Mr. Fadnavis, realized that big dams are of no use. So that's why he started the Jal Yukt Shivar program, which was pretty successful in creating water bodies in each and every village in Maharashtra. So this project not only was less expensive, it got the entire community to participate, and democracy was brought to the grassroots. So such experiments will take hold now, and not just the earlier way of living. Sustainability will be the mantra from now on. The world also should grow at, I think, not more than a 3 to 4% growth rate if we are to be sustainable. Now we only talk of competition with China. China ka 8% hai, humko 9% grow karna hai. That's a very wrong attitude to have. We're not in a race for our percentage of growth. So the world has to grow at 3 to 4%, and it should create employment in the rural areas, and the villages should also become nice places to live in. Otherwise, why did the people come to the cities in the first place? Not because the villages were bad or whatever. There were no jobs being created in the villages. They all came to the cities, lived a life in hellholes. And what happened in the villages? Situation. Now that many of them have gone back to the villages, I feel that we should make use of this opportunity. We should map their skills. Many of them have learned a lot of good skills when they were here. So we should map their skills. We should take development to the villages. We should give people the power to decide what they want to do. And then I think that's the way forward. So COVID-19 is not just a disaster. It's a great opportunity to reboot our entire model of development also. I end my words with this, and if you have any questions, we'll take it up at the end. Thank you.
All right. So if I conclude Anil sir's speech, it is all about conclude in one quote. So he is just trying to say that we should think global, but we should act local. And this is the message that we should give to our, you can say, students.
You don't even have to think global. You think local and act local. That's the way forward. No need to think global. The global is gone today. Global is gone. It will take a long time for your flights also to come back, and global is all through the internet.
Okay, all right. So by the time I invite Kiran sir, so before I invite him, so I just want to inform all the participants that participants can ask their questions on the chat box, and the most relevant questions will be, asked to all the panelists. And yeah, in last webinar, we had a request from many of the participants that we should keep, or we should have 10 questions instead of 5. So this time we are keeping 10 questions, and we'll be picking up 10 questions. Also note that at the end of this, principal of Hindu Seva Parisad's Public Night Degree College, Dr. Seema Malankar, is going to announce our 5th webinar of this series. So I now invite Kiran sir to, just share the screen with us. And Kiran sir is going to speak about the future of industry and how our students can grab this opportunity, since the labors are going out continuously. So Kiran sir, the screen is yours. Kiran sir, just a moment.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Jamin Bhai, Judy, and organizers. I will speak on basically Gandhi and industrialization, and my presentation basically intends to decipher the present COVID 2019 pandemic situation in terms of what has gone wrong and what unspeakable mistakes being committed by, if not entire humankind, then some of them at least, by keeping at the core some of the Gandhi's ideas, presenting also humbly, of course, some critique of some of the Gandhi's ideas at the same time. Now, let me, bring to your notice the current tragedy as it is unfolded in most horrible way in terms of miseries of urban migrant labor toiling in the unorganized sector. As per recent economic survey, the total population of migrant labor is estimated to be as large as 139 millions. And a survey conducted by SWAN, Stranded Workers Action Network, has reported that more than 70% of them had rations that could last for only 2 days. Most of them had no cash, or as neither owners paid them nor government has provided any relief. As per another authentic survey by Ajivika Bureau, about 95% of the migrant labor do not have ration card in the city, and this harsh reality has been compounded during pandemic as they have not been entitled for government relief measures due to that. So they are often referred as invisible workers or invisible citizens, as their names are not registered or enumerated in any official records, neither at workplaces for obvious reasons, and nor at any government level registration document, census, or local governance bodies, whether at native places or destination places. Our recent study done at Center for Social Studies, Surat, the Surat is known for textile and diamond industries in small and medium level sectors, and in which more than 65% population are constituted by migrant workers, mainly from other states. And the large majority of them belong to scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and OBC groups in terms of social groups, and are landless or small and marginal farmers with unfertile land. So on top of that, the mainstream urban social order constituted of by elites and middle class consider them nuisance and blot in city's beauty. So conveniently ignoring the fact that they form the backbone of city's prosperity, as mainly due to their inhuman exploitation, an affluent section enjoys all the luxuries. And the state's overall concern towards entire working people is utterly disdainful and pathetic, which is reflected in magnified manner in this pandemic period. Now, they are considered as a footloose labor, as renowned social scientists who have done very pioneering work on workers, Professor Jan Bremen of Netherlands. So in hundreds of thousands have taken long journey of thousands of kilometers back home on foot, an unbelievable feat for any human being. So on the other side, if you take into consideration our major index of decent human living, India ranks 177 among 180 countries in terms of environmental performance index, indicating poor performance in environment health policy and deaths due to air pollution categories. So now I go back to relate this dismal scenario with the Gandhian thoughts and ideas as depicted in Hind Swaraj, especially related to industrialization and machine. And you see, Hind Swaraj is the only text, only book in which Gandhi has formulated his basic and core and philosophical ideas on human life, ideal society, and with the different related aspects, and articulated it in a very simple way but very sharp way. So this book, written in 1908, while he was traveling from Britain to South Africa in a steamer and have some free time. So he has written this book especially in original Gujarati, and then it was translated in many languages. So while he was in South Africa, Gandhi, he was constantly in close touch with Indian colonial situation, and the issue of independence was uppermost in his thought process even there. So he preferred to write down those ideas in Hind Swaraj. But once he returned to India in second decade of last century and got himself fully immersed in freedom-related activities, perhaps he might not have space and refine those ideas. But he remained very firm. Very, in fact, one should say, even Nehru has said that he was very adamant in his adherence and commitment to all these ideas written in Hind Swaraj till his death, despite strong criticism from several quarters and even outright rejection of them by none other than his most intimate aide and colleague, Nehru. Nehru, in fact, ridiculed Hind Swaraj. So let us begin with a real-life anecdote of a meeting between Gandhi and another very famous figure, Charlie Chaplin, in 1931 in Britain, when Gandhi was attending the Round Table Conference. So Chaplin wrote him with a request to grant a meeting, and Gandhi was totally unaware about who Chaplin was. So he simply rejected because he had no time. He declined. But his aides, his friends, they insisted that he must meet this famous artist. So they met. And the nervous Chaplin was very nervous while meeting Gandhi. He told him that I am all for the freedom of your country and your people, but there is one thing that I don't understand. Why do you oppose the use of machines? Don't you think that a lot of work would come to a standstill if machines are not used? Gandhi very politely replied in a very simple terms that I am not against machines, but I cannot bear it, that is machine, when these very machines take away a man's work empire, because we cannot overcome our attraction for British goods. Freedom will surely be ours if we learn to free ourselves from this attraction. And many believe that the Chaplin's one of the best and seminal work, a classic in as far as film is concerned, Modern Times, was inspired deeply from this very short exchange between Gandhi and Chaplin. So, in a sense, Modern Times, if you must see this movie, was not just a Chaplin movie, but it's a Gandhi's inspiration was motivating force in making that classic. It was not only a Chaplin's critique, but reflected Gandhian viewpoint as well as Gandhi's inner concern of all the things that went wrong with the world and still is going wrong even now. That is what Gandhi termed, and Gandhi termed it, listen carefully, he termed this machine as modern civilization at that time. So human works so hard to maintain those very machines that will make them unemployed in the future, pushing their ilk into poverty. Modern Times is a movie which examines this paradox, a movie which delves into the problems of overwork, of unemployment, of machines that are paranoid about each second of time the worker wastes at the workplace. Chaplin himself has acknowledged in his autobiography that Gandhi inspired him to make this movie on the dehumanizing effect of automation. So for Gandhi, one issue is very central issue. The core issue is instrumentalization or dehumanization of human being due to use of machines. And in Hind Swaraj, Gandhi clearly appears as categorical critic of machinery, calling it in his great simple word, it's a great sin, a snake hole. But as has mentioned above, Gandhi's opposition was not against one component, such as machine or industrialization. Rather, he considered modern civilization or European civilization as major evil, and British rule was symbol representative of this malevolence. And he signified his opposition publicly in rallies, in public meetings, in newsreel by wearing a loincloth after 1920. By doing so, as renowned thinker Emma Tarlow has analyzed, Gandhi created a symbol to reject European value system. So on an ideological level, Gandhi envisaged and perceived and equated British civilization with modernity, industrialization, technology, and urbanization. He had visited British more than once and hence had witnessed situation over there. He did not use the term alienation as Karl Marx did for workers, but had term enslavement of them to machinery. Prior to Gandhi, other thinkers and philosophers who inspired Gandhi had raised voice against modern civilization, which they considered materialistic at the core. Renowned thinker Rousseau had reacted strongly against materialism way back in 18th century. He believed that due to brutal assault of modern civilization, robust farmers were leaving villages and moving to cities to live in slums. Human beings are becoming selfish, and contradiction has emerged between moral human being and immoral social order of modern civilization. Baudelaire from France had written in 1851 that the things with which we desire to live will ruin us in long run. The apparent progress would destroy our spirituality and which would be reflected in our heinous hearts. Tolstoy wrote that this set of luxuries are making us mad. We are running after materialistic comforts blindly. We have lost touch with real essence of life, true meaning and happiness of existence. Thoreau criticized it very severely. This world has become a market. Nobody has time at their disposal and everybody is seen running. Business and commerce have occupied their mind, attention. I consider this mentality as crime against humanity, against poetry, against philosophy. As we realize now how prophetic these ideas, these words of these great figures are here. So Gandhi too was, against these dreadful characteristics of modern civilization and not against machine and technology per se. He even considered that spinning wheel, charkha, that he vouched for entire life was also a machine. So was human body, a speck, a plow. But he was against obsession of machine. He accepted the argument that machine did save labor, but he was worried about rural-based local artisans, such as potter, blacksmith, weaver, carpenter, who would become unemployed due to factory production. And in the long run, as he had foreseen rightly, and even in present context of globalization, one can decipher, mechanization would make people unemployed in big proportion in the long run. Rural artisans, as Gandhi had feared, have become extinct to an extent. So he did not buy argument that mechanization would save time and tiresome labor. First of all, he was firmly of the view that human body must be properly utilized in physical labor. Unnecessary and overusage of machine would make human body weak and useless. So in a way, he associated weak human body with weak human mind, which are not capable of freedom. So in a way, he associated weak human body with weak mind. And secondly, machines should be saving time and labor for all, entire human race, not for a few who then enjoyed fruits of this invention at the cost and miseries of other large masses. Gandhi also sharply pointed out that through use of machine, only few, and this was his major limitation. He did not name who these few are. Amazed money, and not all were benefited. So in nutshell, the prime incentive for usage of machine is amazement of money, greed of money, not saving of labor or helping labor as claimed. He also added that technology and scientific research should not be done for greed of few, but interest of entire humankind should be kept at center. However, it is wrong to consider Gandhi uh, as outrightly, rejected machine or technology, likewise Luddite. Maybe this was his practical side, his postmodern side, as some scholars have been suggesting, and which we want to deliberate also, if time permits. But Gandhi was in favor of using machine with discretion. He cited invention of singer machine, which had facilitated women in sewing work. He also emphasized that condition of labor should be improved. They should get good wages and regular work. He even went further and added that mechanization or industry should not only earn money for government and owners, but should also benefit workers and other sections. So here he indicated indirectly about welfare state. So Gandhi, though might not be as a prolific or prodigious reader of world history and philosophy, likewise Nehru, but he was a sharp-minded observer of world scenario in terms of events and larger system, and could analyze them, keeping at core India's colonial status. Moreover, as I said earlier, he visited Britain a number of times and known the system on first-hand basis. So he comprehended the British Empire was at its pinnacle, mainly due to unrivaled industrial, commercial, military, and cultural power due to modern progress, and could foresee that a sizable section of elites and middle class within India may get influenced, and he proved right also, by British intellectual and cultural traditions. And obviously, he was more worried about that. So his prophetic Hind Swaraj, he directly and indirectly reiterated this point that he had no objection towards British people, but towards modern civilization that British were representing. In the dialogical form of that text, that is Hind Swaraj, when readers said that we will throw the British out, but we will keep their constitution, we will have military, we'll have our own flag, our own prosperity like the British, Gandhi immediately retorted, which means that we want British or English state power, but not English people. You wish to have nature and traits of tiger, but not tiger itself. In other words, you wish to make Hindustan other Britain. This is not Swaraj of my dream, he firmly concluded. So in Hind Swaraj, at an ideological and philosophical level, Gandhi was countering British colonial rule in terms of its core ideology that he considered as modern civilization, with its major characteristics and components as industrialization and urbanization. And as a counterpoint, he cited and rather glorified self-sustained rural Indian civilization, which was existing since ancient time. And unfortunately, our present rulers are also hyping on this point. Uh, uh, anyway, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir. You're audible.
Okay, okay. Thank you, thank you. So, so he was, I mean, glorifying rural Indian civilization, who was, I mean, producing and satisfying their own minimum needs within village. So his Hind Swaraj had to be realized through Gram Swaraj. His idealism was that people worked in open to produce and satisfy their needs, and this self-dependence could only be achieved in rural society. So he was, I mean, countering this urbanization with rural society. But as observers, many observers have noted that Gandhi, as Gandhi came to the fore in 1919 and built and led mass political movement, the core agenda of political power was given precedence by him and other political leaders over economic and technological dimensions he had been emphasizing. So Gandhi as a leader got engrossed more in nitty-gritty of building a mass movement, giving it his priority, and had very little space for dwelling much on impact of industrialization, which had become reality even then, and how to find a coping mechanism in relation to counter the harmful effects of industrialization. But at the same time, once he got active in public life and quickly emerged as prime architect and steering force of independence movement, he was required to intervene in several internal issues and disputes, even those directly not involving the British. One such dispute I want to cite here was industrial standoff between Indian capital and labor in Ahmedabad in 1918. It is not possible to dwell on the details of that quarrel, resulted into formation of labor union that function on Gandhian, so-called Gandhian ideology, and that approach of Gandhi for resolving industrial disputes later in post-independent India has taken form of legislation, even supported by socialist and once left-inclined Nehru, who became, if you remember, he became very strong critic of labor union once he became prime minister. And he argued that we have to now concentrate more on nation building, so forget about strikes and other rallies. But his approach, that is Gandhi's approach, was largely based on specific context of the circumstances as well as time and issue, while keeping independence movement at the center stage. And that prompts several academics to consider him as postmodernist and some as pro-capitalist or as collaborationist. We will avoid that part here, we will not discuss it. But let us briefly in simple terms try to narrate and understand the specific incidents and Gandhi's intervention that indicated his ideas in the specific context. A dispute that arose between factory owners and workers of textile mills in Ahmedabad. Gandhi, when asked to intervene, as Sujata Patel has noted in her work, until the dispute of 1918, Gandhi had not spelled out his thought on the capital-labor relationship in industry. However, once he was compelled to intervene, as per his essential trait, he developed his ideas on the industrial relations within the context of dispute, but at the same time, keeping independent struggle at core. So Sujata Patel has noted that the core of the Gandhian ideology of industrial relations lies in Gandhi's conception of morality and ethics, built on such concepts as justice, honor, dignity, and self-respect, while other philosophers had highlighted the unequal nature of strengths of two sides. Gandhi emphasized a mutuality between capital and labor. The wealth of the capitalist is useless without workers, for there would be no hands to make the mills, to work the mills. Similarly, without mill owners, the workers would be useless. So Sujata Patel mentioned that Gandhi has also highlighted spiritual and inward-looking dimensions of the East as against the materialistic and outward-looking dimensions of the West. To Gandhi, what was distinctive of the East was the sense of justice based on notions of fellow feeling, compassion, and mercy. This determined relationship between groups in society. In traditional society, this sense of justice was reflected in the master-servant relationship. Servants who had been associated with the master's family for generations were always regarded as part of the family. As a result, conflicts between master and servant were settled mutually. Now, this is very controversial. So, I will not go into further detail. I think I don't have much time also now, right, Jamie? So
Yes,
Gandhi, I don't have much time.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, we have
5
almost
minutes.
here now.
5 minutes.
Yes,
I take
sir.
5 minutes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I will end it very quickly now. I will leave education part. I will only talk about some critical point regarding Gandhi's thought. First point was that this Hindu Swaraj, the notion of Swaraj. Now, this notion of Swaraj and this notion of Charkha, it involves basically individualistic effort, because he believed that people individually by spinning would earn enough to live on. So he fundamentally made economic argument in favor of Charkha on individual level. He pointed out that the peasants of India could not survive solely on agriculture, but spinning could supplement their income. Secondly, another point which is very important, that what Gandhi is talking about Hind Swaraj, he never talks about, he always talks about individual heart, change of heart and everything, but he never talks about system or structure. He talks about modern civilization, but he never talks about capitalism. So that is also, somebody said it is postmodern side, somebody said it's a pro-capitalist side. So this point which Anil Bhai has also mentioned, trusteeship. Now trusteeship, you know, he has advocated trusteeship, but we all know that owners would never give up their control or power over means of production. So these are certain critical points. And lastly, as a concluding remarks, I would say that he is a very, he is a visionary. He opposed railways, and now we can see in pandemic that railways have stopped. So that is the, his opposition has some visionary idea. His idea of criticism of materialism also proved correct. Simple life also proved correct. And though Karl Marx has also talked about dehumanization, alienation, but he never envisaged the problem regarding materialism which Gandhi has envisaged. So these are certain points, and thank you to organizers and others. I'm sorry that I have taken more time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so now we invite Vibhuti Patel, ma'am. She'll be speaking about Gandhi's philosophy and economy. Vibhuti, ma'am, the screen is yours now.
Presentation, brilliant presentations by Mr. Anil Hebbar and Kiran Desai. I got this opportunity, and I think I would like to thank first of all the President of Indian Council of Basic Education, Nukur Ben, for providing such a visionary leadership. Initiative taken by Dr. Ratnaprabha Rajmane and Dr. Judy is very important. Jamin Bhai, you provided this platform. We are extremely thankful to you that you chose such a relevant topic, which is being discussed among movers and shakers in the world, not only in India, that how Gandhian philosophy is very, very much needed in today's historical juncture. So my presentation is on application of Gandhian philosophy in the context of post-lockdown COVID-19 pandemic. Jamin Bhai, should I upload my PPT or will you?
Ma'am, you just try to upload yours because it will be very convenient for you. Otherwise, we'll do it.
Yeah. 1 minute. Screen share. PPT upload
Ma'am, wait, we are doing it. No problem. We'll be doing it. Just a moment, ma'am. We are doing it.
It's desktop. No, it's there. It's there.
Ma'am, we are doing it. Wait.
No, we are also doing. We got it.
Okay, done. Okay.
Yeah, desktop.
Where is it?
Hollow person.
Vibhuti ma'am, PPT is there on the screen. You just, start with the presentation. We have your PPT on screen. Okay. Ma'am, your PPT is there on screen. Vibhuti ma'am, if you can just check it out. The PPT is already uploaded on the screen. You just need to start with it. We are just changing the slides.
Ma'am, you can start, ma'am. It is there. Your slides are there.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes,
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 ma'am.
yes.
Ma'am,
we
you're
are.
audible and the slides are there on the screen.
Okay. So the presentation is on application of Gandhian philosophy on in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. So I think some of the important concern that we have is how to next slide. Slide. I have to move slide. No? Okay, got it. Yeah. So the current scenario of COVID-19 is full of human misery, and what we have seen that onslaught of this COVID-19 has threatened millions of people, and the kind of photographs that we are seeing on the screen is the very in the newspapers and in the social media. Yeah, it shows that the motorways which we used to consider to be a golden corridor to become a $5 trillion economy has now become nothing but the symbol of human miseries that we are seeing. And this reminds us of a Gandhiji's letter to Jawaharlal Nehru in October 5, 1945. And I quote, "When the moth approaches its doom, it whirls round faster and faster till it is burnt up. It is possible that India will not be able to escape this moth-like circling. It is my duty to try until my last breath to save India through it, the world from such fate." So I think here we are reminded of Gandhiji's philosophy of what he talked like Dr. Professor Kiran Desai, and also I think Anil Bhai also brought it up. First of all, most important, that integration of economics, politics and technology with ethics. So ethics and morality becomes very, very important. The concept of trusteeship, both Anil Bhai and Kiran Bhai have unpacked it. That's very, that we all are trustees. We can't have ownership and control over means of production. Third one is the glaring social and economic disparity which are there existing in the society. They need to be addressed. We should live in harmony with nature. So Gandhiji was a very much a strong environmentalist. And again, Anil Bhai also brought up this issue, first of all, the globalization. We all are connected on internet, we are connected on social media, but at the same time, we can't be oblivious to our local reality and learning to the experience of entire world within the precincts of our immediate villages and neighborhood, and to live in harmony with our environment, eschewing exploitative practices as far as possible. So I think this is very important. And also he talked about the regeneration of rural economy to bring about like a whole his dream of Gram Swaraj, and he also talked about, and this is very important. Another myth which is that about the Gandhiji was not so much into science and technology, but I think Gandhiji was very much interested in science. What he was against was the negative implication of some of the scientific things. In 1939, this is a famous photograph of Gandhiji which shows that how Mahatma Gandhi, he was with a doctor, he was studying the leprosy germs with a microscope. He realized that it was so important to understand virology, and leprosy patients who were otherwise socially ostracized, abandoned by their own family members, he brought them to the ashram and looked after them. So it is the, and he also talked about that it is the health that is real wealth and not the pieces of gold and silver. So this was also very important concern of Gandhiji. Hello? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, you are audible. You are audible, ma'am.
Yeah, because I can't see you, no, so that's it. Okay, so another very important message which Gandhiji gave so far as the modern economics, neoclassical economics, that believed this was rested on the premise of hedonism, because in economics the first thing we are taught is about as a consumer you try to maximize your satisfaction, and as a producer you try to maximize your profit. I think both of this hedonistic way of very self-centered way of economic organization, Gandhiji was opposed to it, because you can't overconsume. We have to talk about, as the prayer in the beginning of this program said, that we have to distribute. We have to Om Sahanavavatu, Om Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karvavahi. We all say that we should always share and care about the people around us. So what he said was that economics that hurt the moral well-being of an individual or a nation are immoral and also sinful. That means वह अर्थशास्त्र अनैतिक है जो पाप युक्त है और किसी व्यक्ति या राष्ट्र के नैतिक कल्याण को क्षति पहुंचाता हो. And I would like to quote Gandhiji's one very positive message which he always gave, and he talked about greatly in his writings, in his speeches. And I quote Gandhiji here that just before his death, he had made this statement that I will give you a talisman wherever you are in doubt, or when the self becomes too much for you, try following expedient. Recall the face of the poorest and the most helpless man whom you may have seen, or asked yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use to him or her, if he or she be able to gain anything by it, will it restore him or her to a control over his or her own life or destiny? Then you will find your doubts melting away, and quote completed. I think this is the time all of us need to ask this question and say that whatever we are talking, we are practicing, we are preaching as educationists, as teachers, as a decision makers in the higher education system, that what are we doing harm, or are we helping the large majority of population? We are seeing the human miseries in our social media. We are seeing them, the videos, we are seeing them in newspapers, the kind of human miseries that COVID-19 has this thing. We all are teaching that 92% of the workers are in the informal sector. But what does it mean to be in informal sector where there is a law of jungle, there are no rules and regulation, no social protection, and no social security? Now, it is in this context that Gandhiji's talisman of simple living and high thinking becomes very important. As a consumer, we need to give up hedonistic greed, hoarding, overconsumption. We have seen some very, very demeaning videos about how people were fighting over tissues in America, no, in the mall. And they all were buying 100 and 200 and 500 packets, no, and they were ready to have a physical fight over that. Overconsumption we have to control. We must practice social justice and distributive justice the way Anil Bhai and his team are doing currently in the context of COVID-19. And Gandhiji's another very famous slogan, which most of the environmentalists are also using, is that, and I quote, "The earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not any man's greed." I think this is a very, very important, that we need to live in harmony with Mother Nature. We can't rape Mother Nature. We can't overexploit Mother Nature, and we have to nurture Mother Earth. We have seen that after the lockdown, when the industrial pollution reduced, how Mother Nature has flourished. Another very important message and important understanding that we have about the Gandhian economic philosophy is Gram Swarajya, his whole concept of village Swarajya and Gram Swarajya. In the light of COVID-19, we can say that now it's very important, like all along, even all the migrants, even who they are like, we have 12 crore migrant workers in our country, out of which over 3 crore are women. Okay, and now they are going back to the villages because cities are soulless, cities are heartless. The same people who were using their labor for 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, they have abandoned them. They feel completely betrayed, and there is a crisis of confidence. So Gandhiji affirmed that India's soul lives in its villages. He believed in decentralized development. To Gandhiji, villages were the basic unit of social organization, and therefore the villages should be self-sufficient. And that's why he also said the COVID pandemic has made the whole world struggle to procure basic goods and necessary medical equipments, and hardly a few countries have a stock. Luckily, India has adequate number of pharmaceutical companies. In any case, even before COVID, 60% of the affordable medicines and bulk drugs were provided by India. Though we were dependent on raw material from China over the last 10 years, we have become increasingly dependent. But still, India has been, to this date, India has been providing supply of medicine to more than 120 countries. This crisis period has also taught us a lesson that every country must possess basic amenities for self-survival. It is very important for the sovereignty, food sovereignty, food self-sufficiency, infrastructural facilities. They have to be very important. Another very important aspect which came in the context of Professor Kiran Desai's explanation on Hind Swaraj, Gandhiji also believed in craft-based occupation. Now, increasingly, the self-help groups, women's organizations, they are also demanding. Yesterday, there is a big lead article on the agenda page of the Indian Express where they are demanding. They are saying that we must go back when all these lakhs of workers are going back to the villages. I think let us again rejuvenate and we should develop our craft-based economy. Yeah. Now, the experience of COVID-19 has also shown that everything is not bad. If there are a lot of human miseries, there are a lot of heartbreaking stories, but at the same time, lot of good is happening. Mr. Anil Hebbar did not talk about his own work currently in terms of visual presentation. He has a lot. So I have taken some of the photographs of their work over last 45 days. He and his team of young volunteers, along with several social organizations in Mumbai, how they are democratically providing support, because nobody likes to stand in a queue, or nobody likes to, we should, without violating the dignity of people. So first of all, acknowledgement that informal sector workers, daily wage workers, domestic workers, they all are an important component of the economy. With that humility, you go and implement the Gandhian economics by the frontline workers during COVID pandemic. So many of them are promoting khadi masks made by self-help organizations. There is a distribution of essential food in a very, very dignified and organized way. They are also distributing sanitation items like soap and mask and other medicines. They are also distributing wherever possible. There are many people who are contributing. They're sitting at home, they make cloth bags and give to their group, Helping Hand Trust and Ghar Bachao Ghar Banao. So I think men and women volunteers in the communities and camps are braving coronaphobia. I think Anil Bhai gave an example that how everybody is scared of them. Nobody wants to touch their mobile. Nobody wants to touch their iCard because they think that they will get corona. This thing. So even in the midst of such panic, that they are so dedicatedly working. And also even the community kitchens, they are running currently 5 community kitchens with looking after food of 1,200 migrant workers, 500, 700, 300 like that. But they are also, the menu is decided by them. It is not just ready-made khichdi dumped down their throat, because the way we are choosy about our food, they also decide. So I think that is dignity of labor and respecting them, that is very important. Another very important economic principle of Gandhiji, self-reliance, and I think it has been currently also, we are increasingly political leaders are talking about it. Gandhiji's principle is relevant here as it's stressed on self-reliance at a local level. With globalization and outsourcing has become a key principle of business. And now again, after the COVID pandemic, I think all countries are thinking very, very seriously about re-examination of globalization, just based economic globalization based on maximization of profit and cutting the cost. Cutting the cost is the rat race which each country is competing, and by violating the workers' rights. So I think that is also, there is a lot of rethinking is going on. International Labour Organization yesterday released its report in which it talks about the decent work principles that need to be implemented during the COVID lockdowns, which I experienced in several countries, and also post-COVID. He talked about the spinning, Gandhiji talked about the spinning wheel as a symbol of hope for the masses, where he talked about it's not only the spinning wheel only for khadi production, but also the decentralized development. Gandhiji said very clearly that economics that hurts the moral well-being of an individual or a nation is immoral, and that's why it is sinful. Interventions, now coming to the educational institutions during this COVID-19, and how have they implemented Gandhian principles in practice? In practice, I think the relief operations which are happening all over the country, whether they are students from IIT, IIM, Mumbai University, SNDT, or TISS, various social work colleges, all of them are very much active. That is distribution of kits, sanitary material, mask, cloth bag. Well, there are many volunteers who are also volunteering for the community kitchens. You have to do mass level cooking, and these young boys and girls and citizens are CSOs, like citizens organizations. They are playing very important role. Community based organizations have played a very important role, where none of the bureaucrats or administrators or politicians are ready to step into lockdown area or a confined containment area. These are the brave frontline workers, frontline volunteers who are entering those places. I have only once I have gone with them, and I've seen how difficult the work is. Networking with the supply chain, it's very important to network, and Anil Bhai said that it is the small street corner grocers. They are the ones who have come to the aid. Most of the big malls are closed, but these are the small grocery owners, grocery shop owners, or the farmers who are now directly coming to the cities in the tempo and providing vegetables and fruits. Small producers and the corporates, they have also now started making essential survival needs at the subsidized rate, and also some of them are giving free of charge. For example, Parle Gluco is distributing the Gluco biscuit, and especially that's very important because there's migrants who are walking for thousands of miles, say going from Mumbai to Bihar or going from Chennai to Assam. It takes, whether it is by tempo or truck or ambulance, or some people are even walking and taking 3-wheeler and 4-wheeler. They also, for them, these dry snacks are very, very important. Coordinating with the government organizations, because now again after COVID lockdown, there is a license permit, Raj, for everything. You need a lot of paperwork done, whether it is online or offline. And I think that's why, whether right from getting regular water or an LPG gas in the household or in the camps where the people are housed, homeless people, migrant people, and daily wagers are housed, you need all these basic essential services. In educational institutions, we are teaching in a research methodology. We always teach the concept of micro planning, need assessment of the people, identification of specific needs of specific households. For example, elderly persons have a different needs. Diabetic or person with heart condition has a different need. Persons with disability, their needs are different. Those who are excluded due to caste or religion or gender, they are, because women-headed households which are managed by widows, divorced, and transgender community, sex workers, these are the people who get totally neglected. Neither the government organizations nor the philanthropic organizations reach them. In fact, one prestigious organization refused to give food for transgender community. Finally, it is a Helping Hand Charitable Trust and Ghar Bachao Ghar Banao volunteers who started providing this thing, food to transgender community. Similarly, today Meena Shishu gave us 2-hour lecture for Bombay University. Webinar was given. That Sangram organization is supporting the sex workers throughout the COVID period in terms of food packets and whatever other necessities they have. Another very important thing that has happened is that because there is an information channel, whether it is through social media, through PDF of newspapers that we are getting, preparation of audio-visual clips, messages, short films on the immediate day-to-day problems during the COVID tragedy or COVID pandemic, I think is very helpful to address the issue. Because if you suppress the information, you can't find the solution. So yesterday, like if we saw, my first slide was of those very, very heart-wrenching pictures, very heartbreaking pictures of the migrant workers that we saw. Immediately, the local organizations, NGOs, they started wherever they were going on the highway. Their organizations, they went there with the food packets, with the bottle of water, like that. So another thing that many students and the organizations have made is directory of different types of services, whether it is a health services, elderly care services, violence against women, so domestic violence, the services, what kind of, within the lockdown regime, what kind of services are available and they can be availed. So helplines are functioning. They are providing this on a public platform. Preparation of educational and recreational material. So many children, like crores of children are sitting at home. They get bored. Now it is the 2 months of lockdown. So a lot of educational material, online material has been prepared. Using of personal vehicles, so many boys and girls who would otherwise use their 2-wheelers or 4-wheelers just to go for a ride, ride or to go. Now these are the boys and girls. Now they are using their vehicles for relief supply of relief goods. That's very, very encouraging. In fact, most of the newspapers, daily newspaper, if you see, they are devoting 2 or 3 pages a day with photographs that what kind of good work that these youngsters are doing in terms of supplying food, in terms of reaching to the lonely senior citizen, in terms of providing, running to give the medicine on time to heart patients and things like that. Webinars, Zoom talks, panel discussions for the citizens, they have been organized in a big way. We are seeing daily 3 to 4 webinars on a very, very immediate, serious and issues which demand intervention. They are organized. So it is not only esoteric ivory tower exercise that we are doing, but we are taking up very, very relevant themes so that solution can be found. The camps, relief camps, which are run by NGOs, they in the evening they also show films like Anil Bhai Hebbar, like Warsaw. I visited Warsaw camp where 1,200 migrant workers are being given shelter. In the evening, every evening, they, in his laptop, they are showing the film. So it is not only just a custodial care to the migrant workers, but also they are treated as citizens, and the way all of us crave for recreation and leisure time activity, that is also being looked after. That means the intentions are good. Our reach is limited, as Anil Bhai also said, that there are 12 crore migrants, and the NGOs and the civil society organizations are able to reach out to some lakhs. But so we have a long way to go. Another very important lesson of COVID-19, learning through electronic media. So those who are digitally connected, they are getting benefits of the Zoom platform or WebEx platform or GoToMeeting platform. But those who are not, that means a lot of students who are on right to education, under RTE Act, or those who are from a weaker section of society, they are left out. So I think we need to address this issue immediately. I think radio is a very important. We must use FM radios and various TV channels, which are like national channels for educational program during the lockdown and also post lockdown this thing. And our education should not be only skill based or information based, but it also the end goal of education should be responsible citizenship, that we have to care for our country, we have to care. And this responsible citizenship, you can see in this photograph where the student volunteers are helping people with the paperwork. There are young girls taking food to the people who are ill, okay, in the camp. Or you have students who are organizing orientation program or providing proper information. And also IIT students from IIT, IIM, all of them are helping the migrant workers with their paperwork, online paperwork. That means true knowledge gives a moral standing and moral strength. I think this is what these people are trying to, are conveying to us. And I think the same legacy we need to take further. Gandhiji's major concern, like what he said, was that economic equality is a master key to non-violent independence. So if you believe in ahimsa, if you believe in non-violence, you have to support all the actions, all the practices which are promoting social justice, distributive justice. And being a woman, like in the women's movement, we also talk, say 50% of the population, we should have a gender justice. Non-violent occupation is that occupation which is fundamentally free from violence and which involves no exploitation or envy of others. अहिंसक व्यवसाय वह है जो मूलतः अहिंसा से मुक्त हो और जिसमें दूसरों का शोषण अथवा उसके प्रति ईर्ष्या का कोई स्थान न हो. I think this was a very important message of Mahatma Gandhi, and I think we need to practice that. And real meaning of economic equality is that to each according to his or her need. That's very important. And Gandhiji always said, I would like to end with his dictum that be the change that you want to see in the world. Thank you very much.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much, Vibhuti ma'am. So before we start the question answer session, I would like to invite Principal of Hindu Seva Parishad's Public Night College, Dr. Seema Malankar, to announce our fifth webinar of this particular season. So after that, we'll be starting the question answer session. Seema madam. Seema ma'am, can you hear me? Seema ma'am? Maybe we have lost the connection. So we'll just start with the question answer session. We have few questions. Actually, we need to just cut short the question to again 5 because we are running short of time. The first question is to Mr. Anil Hebbar, and the question is from Anuradha Shekhar. The question is, since you have worked in slums, this is to you, Anil sir. Since you have worked in slums, what are the changes and the attitudes that you have observed that will change? Will this also affect issues like family planning, job scenario, eating patterns, etc.?
In the slums, definitely there's a lot of awareness on hygiene now. But then if they don't have enough water and all that, how do you even, like you ask them to wash your hands, and for 20 seconds, if there's no water even to drink, how do you wash your hands? So there are a lot of things that we have to do before they can change.
Correct.
So we need to actually redevelop most of the slums in a proper manner, involving them, not just hand over to the builders and build a vertical slum for them. They have to do the redevelopment themselves, and then only things will improve. It will take time, but there's definitely more awareness on hygiene and the need for physical distancing and things like that. But how do you do it in a 10 by 10 room where 12 people are living?
Correct.
All right, so here comes the second question. I have, again, this question is to Mr. Anil sir. This is from Dr. Kavita Kalkoti. The question is, internet is the new global, and every individual has access to the virtual world. How will this influence Indian villages maybe 5 years from now?
Yeah, the internet will be very, very useful for the villages, because you can stay in touch with anybody. Like today, sitting at home, we do all our banking transactions. We don't have to go to the banks, and for everything we are using the internet. So I think internet will continue to play a very major role even in the villages for finding the markets. For example, there are so many e-portals today for selling your vegetables. Even before you harvested, you can sell your vegetables and get better rates directly to the end user. So all these things will happen. Internet will play definitely a very major role.
All right. So the third question is to Mr. Kiran Desai, Professor Kiran Desai. The question is, do you think that the people who are brand conscious and having a habit of ordering online contribute to Swadeshi? I'll just repeat the question. The question is, do you think that the people who are brand conscious and having a habit of ordering online contribute to Swadeshi movement? The question is from Dr. Rajashri Koladkar.
It's a very tricky question, I think. You see, Swadeshi, I mean, you cannot, you cannot consider all the which are produced in the country as Swadeshi, because we have collaboration with multinational companies, and but what we mean by Swadeshi is those who are producing by staying in the villages, local producers, which are very important, because you see, even the country is progressing in a sense that we do have some international brands now, and so we cannot consider all producers as Swadeshi in that sense. Swadeshi means those who are really producing at the local level, at the village level.
All right. Now we have another question from some anonymous person, and the question is to you, Anil sir, as well as Vibhuti madam can answer this question. The question is, as long as we have privatization in education competition will rule the roost. If we sincerely want to cooperate and value-based education, don't you think education should be government-sponsored? I'll just repeat the question.
Yeah.
As long as we have privatization in the education, it will rule the roost. If we sincerely want to cooperate and and we want a value-based education, don't you think the education should be government-sponsored?
Yeah. I think the most it's very relevant question, and I think United Nations, even the Kothari Commission in 1960s, they asked for 8% GDP should go for education. Currently, our budget, the expenditure on education is less than 3%. So I think, and we are giving free hand to private players, and private players in the professional colleges are the major reason why health expenditure has gone so high. If the for one medical seat, if you have to pay 60,000, or in some of the southern
60 lakhs.
states 1 crore rupees, this doctor is only going to think about how to recover money. So that's why we see currently, if you see the data on debt, the debt, major reason for debt is health expenditure. One illness in your family, even the middle class family is indebted. So what about the working class or the poor people? No, so I think education becomes a very important, even when you talk about the professional education, there is a further this thing that government has to, public sector has to play very, very important role. And this is the lesson that we got even for the COVID-19. Currently, more than 60% of the seats in the government hospitals are vacant. Okay, for seats for the nurses, there is a tremendous shortage of nurses and doctors. Those who are in the private universities, first of all, there is a major brain drain. They don't even stay in India. So I think it's very important that we government takes plays a major role in education, both right from nursery, preschool to doctorate and professional education. Very, very important. And 6% of GDP, even in the Sustainable Development Goal, Millennium Development Goal, the same is the promise which United Nations is asking from the nation state. And there are many, many nations poorer than us are investing that much in the education government. So I think we can easily do. It's a question of political will. We have,
in fact, the Delhi government has shown that it can be done.
correct.
Almost spent up to 26% on education.
Same Kerala government also 40% of the state budget goes to directly to social sector, which is health, education, and strengthening of Panchayati Raj institution. If there is a will, there is a will. Yes, resources are there.
All right, I'm picking the last question, and this is for Kiran sir as well as Vibhuti ma'am. The question is from Santosh Kaul. He says that, or he is asking that, as laborers and other workers are going back to the villages or their hometowns, can't we think, plan and implement the employment opportunities for them through Gandhiji's principle? What measures can be taken for successful implementation in regards to the different levels?
Yeah. First, I think those who have already gone, okay, in last 2 months, like those who started going in the end of March, first week of April, there is a 3 times more demand for MG Narega. So let us design Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Scheme, not at a dead-end job of Dagad Fodaicha, only breaking of stone, but more the kind of resources that we can create. Why should there be so much of disparity between village and the city in terms of the infrastructural facility? So this is the labor, plus all those migrant workers from the city, all of them are highly skilled workers. They have worked in the construction industry, they have worked in the factories, they are turner, feeder, electrician. And when they go, these skilled workers go back to the villages, then they can do massive rural reconstruction. And I think that is also expected. Anil Bhai also gave a hint in his speech about that. What is going to happen once they are so many of them are going to be there. I think I see 33% will remain in this. They will work. If the factory is open, they may come back. But there is a large chunk of workers who will also settle down in villages. We saw that when the 36 textile mills in Mumbai closed down. So many workers, there were around 40% remained in Mumbai, and they got into informal sector, but there were 60% workers who went to the villages, and whenever you go to those villages, you see them running a small unit of a handloom or a power loom sector. No? So that is going to happen because these are the skilled workers. They have picked up so many skills, and in 1991, India adopted flexible labor things. So all these workers are used to multitasking. It is not that they know only one particular thing; they know variety of things. And I think Anil Bhai will say that experience in the last 2 months, 60 days, they are interacting with them. They are extremely creative work. Kiran.
All right. So, so that was an end of this question answer session. Actually,
Kiran Bhai wants to.
It's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we just conclude the question and answer session as well, and we are flooded with many questions right now. But since we are running short of time, we are just ending this particular question and answer session. And now, on behalf of Dr. Seema Malankar, Madam, Principal of Hindu Seva Parishad, I would just, announce the fifth webinar of this particular season. The title of fifth webinar, which is going to be held this particular Saturday from 5 p.m. The title is "Let Teachers Do the Teaching." It is all about how we can make our teachers concentrate more on teaching. The webinar is totally focused on that. We have one of the best speakers that we could get. The first speaker is Deputy Registrar of University of Mumbai. He is Dr. Datta Guge. And the other speaker is one of the Senate member of Mumbai University, Dr. Sangeeta Pawar. Both is going to speak about let the teachers do the teaching. So yeah, now I would like to invite Ratna Prabha Madam to just address to the audience and give the thanking note. Ratna Prabha Madam.
Ratna, she's, I think, muted. She needs to unmute. Yeah. Hello.
Ma'am, can you please unmute yourself? Ratna Prabha Ma'am.
What happened? Kindly call her. Judy Madam is there?
Just a moment, just a moment.
Yeah, I think you'll have to call her.
Judy ma'am, can you please come up? I guess we have lost the connection of Ratna Prabha ma'am. Judy ma'am, you please conclude the session because I guess we have lost the connection of Ratna Prabha ma'am.
Yeah, I think the connectivity is lost for her.
Yeah.
So, on behalf of our institution, Gandhi Shikshan Bhavan, Srimati Surajbagh College of Education, President of ICB, Srimati Nupur Mitra, and all the team and all our college, on behalf of everyone, I would like to thank the eminent speakers. Thank you so much. All the three of you have really spoken on how we could think about working after that is post-COVID. What are some of the issues that can come up on post-COVID and how we can think and plan to work after this. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, Anil sir and Kiran sir. Actually, this webinar, when we began, I'm really indebted to Dr. Vibhuti Patel, who's one of our trustees as well, who really gave a lot of input, insight, and suggested about the speakers. Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving that. Really, that's one of the reasons why we could go this far. And I also thank Mr. Jaimin for giving us this platform. I thank all the participants who had come. There are about 355 participants who are there in the platform. So thank you for one and all for coming and really being benefited from this seminar. Thank you so much.
All right, so we are just concluding this session, and I would like to apologize for, being little late than the time. So, we have planned to conclude it by 6, but right now it is 6:30. So, and I really thank each and every participant to show this sort of patience. keep yourself till the end. So thank you so much, everyone, and we are really grateful to have such a wonderful participation. See you on this Saturday by 5 p.m. The topic is let the teachers do the teaching. Thank you so much.